Zealots, thank you for your love and support. I appreciate you all. And all in all, the saviors, the protectors, the unifiers, the messiahs, the kings of kings are most loved. Captain Ibrahim Traore, Assimi Goita, Abdurrahmani Chani, our two generals, delivered a very powerful message at UN Security Council concerning the theme, slavery is the gravest crime against humanity. They talked about how other people decided to see us, the blacks, as some kind of things that they can at least trade with, sell us, do whatever they want to do with us, and go scot-free. And these are the same people who are going around preaching human rights to people who said they are civilized people to the whole world and they want to civilize other people. Yet these are the people who treated other people and they are still treating us anyhow because these people don't see us to be equal when it comes to them. They talked about how these same people, after doing these things in the past, are still doing it in the present because they are the same people who are rising to claim that they still want somebody to be the leader in Niger, whereby Niger is a sovereign state.
Excellence, Madame.
Your Excellency, Madam President of the General Assembly, Your Excellency John Dramani Mahama, President of the Republic of Ghana, Secretary General, ladies and gentlemen, I have the honor to deliver this statement on behalf of the member countries of the Confederation of States of Sahel, namely Mali, Niger, and Burkina Faso. On this day of commemoration of the abolition of slavery and the transatlantic slave trade, the member countries of the Confederation bow with respect before the memory of all of the innocent people who suffered unjustly from these abhorrent acts. It is deeply regrettable that societies calling themselves civilized deemed it normal at a certain point in their history to systematically reduce other human beings to the status of things, to torture them, to sell them, to deprive them of all dignity, and to deny them their humanity. Today's ceremony must not be limited to simply honoring the memory of the more than 10 million Africans who were deported and enslaved in inhumane and degrading conditions. It must also serve as an opportunity for us to identify the responsibility for the harm done to Africa and to humanity as a whole, and to affirm a strong collective commitment to act for justice so that such atrocities never happen again. Madam President, on this subject, some states prefer silence and prefer to suffocate the truth about these macabre events. At the time when a series of measures are brought into being to recall and commemorate other human tragedies, sometimes of far lesser magnitude. The Confederation of Sahel States believes, on the contrary, that the truth must be brought to light and the reparations must be pursued. And the current context calls for this as certain nations continue to treat Africa as a private domain to the point where their parliamentarians, like the slavers of yesterday who decided on the fate of millions of Africans, now presume to legislate on the internal affairs of the sister country, the Republic of Niger. The Confederation condemns the pseudo-humanistic and neo-colonialist posture, which reflects a logic of mercantilist and imperialist exploitation of the continent. Indeed, there is a common thread between the slavery and transatlantic trade of the past and the terrorism plaguing the Sahel today, namely the enrichment of colonial and imperial powers on one side and the impoverishment and the fragmentation of Africa on the other. In the past, these powers built their economies by draining Africa of its human labor. Today's African natural resources are being plundered using strategies of terror and endless conflict, and this is done through terrorist mercenaries and other criminal armed groups that are financed and instrumentalized. Madam President, faced with the reflexes of these slave trading and imperialist states that refuse to accept the emancipation of the peoples of the Sahel and of Africa, the Confederation of Sahel States remains committed to supporting any initiative aimed at restoring the dignity of African peoples, including through reparations. We therefore welcome and fully support the initiative of the African Union to adopt a resolution which categorizes slavery and the transatlantic slave trade as the gravest crime against humanity. We also take this opportunity to thank Ghana for so eloquently voicing the continent's position on this question, and we express our deep gratitude to His Excellency John Dramani Mahama, President of Ghana. I thank you.
Thank you, Madam President, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen. As we mark the International Day of Remembrance of the victims of slavery and the transatlantic slave trade, Cyprus joins the international community in condemning these crimes against humanity and honouring the memory of the many millions of enslaved Africans who endured untold suffering and injustice during one of humanity's darkest chapters. For the millions of Africans who survived the abhorrent conditions of captivity before their journey and the horrific conditions of the Middle Passage, a life of degrading treatment, servitude, physical and sexual violence awaited. Slavery and the transatlantic slave trade continue to stand as one of the gravest atrocities in human history and a profound violation of human rights, stripping individuals of their freedom and of their humanity. For Cyprus, a country at the crossroads of continents and civilizations, remembrance carries a particular resonance. Our history, too, has been shaped by colonialism, division, displacement, and the denial of fundamental rights. While the transatlantic slave trade belongs to a different historical and geographical context, its legacy of dehumanization, inequality, and injustice is a reminder that respect for human dignity must never be taken for granted. This legacy can also be found in the entrenched systems of discrimination set up during slavery, but whose consequences undeniably persist to this day. Remembering this past is therefore not merely an act of tribute, it is a duty to acknowledge truth, to educate future generations, and to confront the enduring legacies of racism and exclusion wherever they arise. Madam President, on this day, we reaffirm our commitment to upholding the principles that bind us as an international community: respect for human dignity, equality, and justice. We must continue to fight against racism, racial discrimination, xenophobia, and all forms of intolerance, and to promote inclusive societies. Remembrance must go hand in hand with action. By preserving historical memory and strengthening our collective resolve, we can ensure that the suffering endured by millions is neither forgotten nor repeated. Let us honour the victims of slavery and the transatlantic slave trade not just with words, but with a renewed commitment to building a future where the rights and dignity of every person are fully protected and respected. I thank you.
I thank the distinguished representative of Cyprus. I now give the floor to the distinguished representative of the Russian Federation.
Madam President, the UN was established more than 80 years ago, and the purpose was to end the legitimacy of the racial supremacy theory and to confirm faith in the worth and dignity of a human being in the developing of friendly relations between nations on the basis of the principle of equality and self-determination. We should not forget that during the horrible era of colonialism, what was the norm was a merciless exploitation of people from Africa, treating them as chattel. It is notable that it was the colonial policy and practice which expressed itself in slave trade, apartheid, and other forms of racism was the source and feeding ground for Nazism, which launched the most horrid world war in the history of humankind. The scope of slave trade, including the transatlantic slave trade, were so huge that it's very difficult to take them in and assess. The same applies to the burden which the era of colonial conquest placed on the development of the African continent. It was in Africa that the first genocides of the 20th century took place. Nonetheless, the subjugators to date have not apologized to these people who suffered, much less paid their material compensation for inflicting intergenerational trauma. Russia played a key role in adopting in 1960 at the UN of the Declaration on Granting Independence to Colonial Countries and Peoples, and extended every assistance to the Africans in their struggle of national liberation, creating their statehood and economy, ensuring their defense, preparing their national specialists. We laud the way they broke colonialism, and we pay a great deal of attention to repertory policy of the continent, and we intend to work together with our African friends on this, including through the Russia-Africa Partnership Forum. The issues of eradicating colonialism and neocolonialism were at the core of the discussions that took place during the second Russia-Africa Ministerial Conference in Cairo in December last. Madam President, the only opportunity for us to avoid repeating the tragedies of the past is if we keep the memory of the historic truth. And that is why efforts to fight the falsification of history is one of the key areas of Russian foreign policy. In this regard, we would like our support to the draft resolution submitted by Ghana on behalf of the African group on the declaration on the transatlantic trade and racialized slave trade as a gravest crime against humanity. We also support the decisions it made in February at the African Union Assembly aimed at declaring slavery, deportation, colonization, and crimes against humanity and genocide against Africa. Colleagues, the International Day of Remembrance of the Victims of Slavery and the Transatlantic Slave Trade is an opportunity for us to remember the fate of those who paid with their lives for the well-being and prosperity of colonial states. But our common efforts for historic justice should not boil down to just one date commemoration. They should be conducted permanently. We're convinced that the document for adoption today would be a milestone in this path and will contribute significantly to the strengthening of the international legal regime of fighting the ramifications of colonialism, racism, and racial discrimination. I thank you for your attention.
I thank the distinguished representative of the Russian Federation. I now give the floor to the distinguished representative of Equatorial Guinea.
Excelentísima señora.
Your Excellency, Madam Annalena Baerbock, President of the 80th session of the General Assembly. Secretary General, Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen. My statement will align itself with the statement delivered by His Excellency the President of the Republic of Ghana on behalf of Africa. Your Excellencies, President of Ghana, we would like to welcome you to New York and thank you for your statement on behalf of Equatorial Guinea. We would like to express to you our recognition for being here with us today at the General Assembly as we commemorate this important event, the commemoration of the International Day of Victims of Slavery and the Transatlantic Slave Trade. President, your presence here shows how important this event is for Africa, and it bears witness to the tireless efforts that Your Excellency has been making to ensure that the international community and this General Assembly can finally acknowledge this issue and adopt a declaration on the matter of slavery and the transatlantic slave trade, and say that it is the most serious crime against humanity. Indeed, President, according to UNESCO, between 15 and 20 million Africans were kidnapped and transported against their will from Africa towards North, Central and South America for some 400 years. Many died during their voyage. This widespread deportation effort and the subsequent effects has been considered to be one of the most heinous violations of human rights in the history of humanity. In adopting this declaration and through the relevant resolution, it will now be considered to be the most serious crime against humanity. The effects of this horrendous crime can still be seen in Africa, and the legacy of this continues to have repercussions today in the lives of persons of African descent around the world. Madam President, recognizing the past and building a future of dignity and justice, the theme for this commemoration should lead us to take stock and to think about the sad, shameful legacy that was inflicted upon Africans. Those humans who were subjected to these crimes had little choice. Their only desire was not to die. On this day of commemoration, the Republic of Equatorial Guinea pays tribute to the some 5 million black women and men who were lost in the context of slavery. We pay tribute to all of those valiant fighters from many countries, Jamaica, Haiti, Peru, and the entire diaspora who were affected by these heinous crimes. Madam President, I would like to pay tribute to all of those who were able to build a memorial to honor the memory of those who perished in the context of the transatlantic slave trade, to honor all of those who paid with their lives. The President of Equatorial Guinea has also made a significant contribution to these memorial efforts. I conclude this statement, Madam President, by saying that we are all part of one family, one large family, which is the family of humanity. Within this family, there can be no place for discriminatory treatment against anyone. This year, as we mark the 100th year of the abolition of slavery at the League of Nations in 1926, we all need to honor the memory of those who perished. And we need to say that we must work together and say clearly, never again. Never again can we tolerate this kind of discrimination. We are all part of the same family of humanity. I thank you.
We need to understand as Africans that these people will never accept what they have done wrong to us. And that is the reason to which we need to unite as a people. In this sense, it is our collective unity that will set us free. The reparation these people are not willing to pay. These people haven't stopped what they are doing because they keep coming in, taking the resources. And we, the youth, must also understand that we have a role to play in order to make Africa better. Reparation is something that these people need to pay for all the things that they have done to us. What they are enjoying today is as a result of what their forefathers have done. But what are we also doing in order to uplift and to fight for the struggle of our forefathers? This international court or international whatever, UN, belong to them. They operate it. So we can never get justice from the same people that are suppressing we the Africans. We need to find other means and ways. What they have done to us is the greatest crimes against humanity, subjecting us to other things that they can control, rule us. Look at the brutal things that they have done. Over 10 million people were taken out of Africa. And look at the pain our forefathers went through. Look at the pain they went through in the hands of these people. And these people are not stopping. They are still doing it day in, day out. And that is the reason to which we are calling for the unity of Africa. We need to unite as Africans because these people will never stop what they are doing to us. We all know that this thing that they have done is not good. These are the people that are coming in telling us they love us, they are there to protect us, they are there to help us. But look at the poverty. Look at the things that we are going through in the hands of these same people. Even these people in this 21st century that are preaching human rights, preaching democracy, are still here telling us who they want to rule us in this 21st century. And it is a wake-up call. That Africans, this is the time for us to unite. Our leaders will be writing resolutions. Yes, it is beautiful to raise these things up. But unity is the only thing that will give the African freedom. Unity is the only thing that will get us to where we want to be. We can never defeat these people if we continue to be fighting for these things individually. They know they can go scot-free because we are divided. The African is not united. So everybody does what they want to do. Our forefathers rose and fought, but it got to a point and we want to bow down and beg for these people to give us the freedom we are looking for. And it is not going to happen. That is why Captain Ibrahim Traore said, freedom is taken and not given. And if we are ready for our freedom, we are the only ones that can set ourselves free. United we stand, divided we fall. And united we keep standing forever and ever. The greatest enemy of the African is mental slavery. So let's decolonize ourselves from mental slavery. Let's keep sharing to educate our brothers and sisters. Together we make Africa great for ourselves and the next generations that are going to come. So that's the latest around the world, in Africa, West Africa, and in Burkina Faso.